Hello, welcome back to the channel. And in this video, we're going to be covering the Michigan State Spartans. 2021 was a good year for Michigan. They went, I believe it was 10 and 3 last, 10 and 3 that year. 10 and 3, went to a Peach Bowl, lost to Pittsburgh, but overall, it was a pretty good year for Michigan State. They were led by a great running back who plays for the Seattle Seahawks in Kenneth Walker. I thought Kenneth Walker should have been a Heisman Trophy winner that year, but it is what it is. Mel Tucker was hired by Michigan State. He had a previous coaching stint at the Colorado Buffaloes, but he was kind of fired after 1 year, if I'm correct. Never really got a chance to really build the program, so he goes over to Michigan. Is hired in 2020, but it was during the COVID year, so didn't really get a chance to really set in his set in the foundation at East Lansing. Then the next year they had a pretty good year. And then last year, as you can see on the screen, they fell off. They started off right with a couple of games, couple of victories over Western Michigan and Akron Zips. Then they lose to Washington Huskies. They get blown out by the Minnesota Gophers, and then they lose to Maryland, and then they get blown up by Ohio State. They were able to enter the bye week with a nice win over the Wisconsin Badgers. That game had to go to double overtime, and then and then after that bye week, the very first game was, in my opinion, the low point of their entire season. Not only did they lose to their in-state rival, the Michigan Wolverines, but there was a post-game brawl between the Michigan State players and the Michigan players, in which four Michigan State players attacked a particular Michigan player, and those players were given, charges for the assault. They made plea deals to get out of jail, and they were suspended by the university from team activities and football activities indefinitely. It was just a bad look for the Spartans, even if it is a bitter rivalry that is Michigan and Michigan State, but it's still a bad look nonetheless. They pull off a couple of wins later on against Illinois and Rutgers. Sorry about that, my throat is dry. Illinois and Rutgers, they pull off a couple of nice victories, but then they ended it on a two-game losing streak to the Indiana Hoosiers, in which that game had to go to double overtime, just like the Wisconsin game, and then they get blown out by Penn State, who went on to win the Rose Bowl. So it wasn't like Penn State was a bad team to lose to necessarily. Here is their 2023 schedule. They start off with the Central Michigan Chippewas, the Richmond Spiders, the Washington Huskies again, the Maryland Terrapins, and the Iowa Hawkeyes. Now, I'm going to say they win their first two games against Central Michigan and Richmond. Washington right now is on a pretty good trajectory right now for their program. They're led by who is now their second year head coach, Kalen DeBoer, and their star quarterback, Michael Penix Jr., who's projected to be an early draft pick for the NFL draft in 2024. I don't see Michigan beating Washington. I think right now Washington is found its groove. They had an 11-2 record last year. They beat a couple of nice teams in Oregon and Oregon State. I just think Washington right now is a better team. Maryland, under their head coach Michael Oskley, seems to have hit a very nice stretch in their program. Back to back above 500 records, a couple of straight bowl victories. But I think Michigan State, excuse me, can beat Maryland. It's going to be at home. Then they go on the road to face Iowa. I said in the video regarding Iowa in the Nebraska video, I said that Iowa has one of the best defenses in the Big Ten, but their offense is stagnant. Their offensive philosophy is well outdated, and it doesn't seem like they're going to make the effort necessarily to evolve and head into a more dynamic passing game if Iowa wants to be more than just a perennial 6 to 8 win team and actually possibly compete for Big Ten championships. Um, I have Michigan State losing on the road at Iowa. Then they have their bye week. They're on the road after their bye week at Rutgers. Rutgers are currently in the second stint under Coach Greg Schiano. Greg Schiano, his first stint with the Rutgers was back when the Big East Conference was around. Had a rough patch at first, but then they went on a very nice multi-year streak of making bowl games and winning bowl games and being a annual 8 to 9 win program. At one point, Greg Schiano actually had Rutgers up 11-2, but he has not recaptured that magic since he's been back in New Jersey. It's his second stint. First year they were 3-9. Then the next year they were 5-8, and then the next year they were 4-8. They have yet to win 6 games in their second stint under Greg Schiano. I think Michigan State can go on the road and beat Rutgers. Uh, they're going to be at home against Michigan. I don't see them beating Michigan. Uh, they're getting the very next week on the road at Minnesota. I think they could beat Minnesota. I don't think Minnesota's an unbeatable team. If you watch my video covering the Nebraska Cornhuskers, I said the Nebraska Cornhuskers would beat Michigan State. I like Matt Rule. I think they're going to see major improvement under him in Lincoln, Nebraska. He's shown at Temple and Baylor that in terms of coaching college football, may not necessarily be a good NFL coach, but in terms of coaching college football, programs get better when he's at the helm. Then they're on the road next week at Ohio State. Ohio State is a juggernaut in the Big Ten. They've been that way for a long time. They produce NFL wide receivers every single year like it's no problem. One year it's Jameson Williams, and then it's Chris Olave, and then it's Jackson DeGiba Smith, and they also have Marvin Harrison Jr. They just produce receivers like it's nobody's business. They produce good offensive players every single year. On the road at Ohio State is probably the toughest game of their entire season. Probably tougher than playing against Michigan because at least Michigan you have them at home. This one you're on the road at Columbus to play the Buckeyes. I do not see Michigan State winning that game. Indiana, I think it should be an easy victory for Michigan against Indiana. Tom Allen, he's probably on the hot seat. I mean, on one hand, Indiana is not expected to be challenging for Big Ten titles, but at the same time, I mean, if you look at Tom Allen's time at Indiana, he was 5-7 his first 2 years. Then he had a couple of above 500 records, in which Indiana had not done that since the early 90s, and they won a couple of bowl games. But the last 2 seasons, they are 6-18. They have won 6 of their last 24 games. No program should put up with that level of losing, even if it is Rutgers, even if it is Indiana, even if it is Vanderbilt, even if it is Purdue, even if it is Colorado, even if it is Connecticut or whatever program that you could think of. No program should put up with that. I think Michigan, and it would not surprise me if Tom Allen was fired after the end of this year. Michigan State should go and win that game, and then I have them losing at Penn State, against Penn State, which is a neutral field game at Ford Field where the Lions play. Not the Nittany Lions, the Detroit Lions, the NFL Detroit Lions. I don't see Michigan State beating Penn State. James Franklin is doing a very good job coaching the Nittany Lions. They just won the Rose Bowl last year. Uh, Under James Franklin, the Nittany Lions should always be expected to win 8 to 10 games. Every now and then compete for a Big Ten title. I like the job that James Franklin has done at Penn State. So that's my prediction. I have them losing to Washington, have them losing to Iowa, have them losing to Michigan, Nebraska, Ohio State, and then Penn State. So 6-6 record for Michigan State. No, it doesn't sound that good, but it doesn't really seem like the year that they had under Mel Tucker in 2021. It doesn't really seem like they're growing off of that. It seems like they're just becoming they're deteriorating, and now they're starting to get stagnant. So I don't expect a big year for Michigan. 6-6. Decent. I think that's a decent season for them, and that should be the minimum requirement of every of every college football program. At least make a bowl game. Uh, and just I don't see Michigan being a team that's competing for the Big Ten championship. 6-6 is the record I have for them.